And welcome to another edition of South Texas Now. I'm your co-host, Vanessa Flores, and we here at South Texas Now hope you're doing great today. Today I'm here to interview my very own father, Mr. Joe Flores. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Vanessa. Thanks for having me on. It's kind of creepy that, I'm not doing the questions, but I love it. You have me under cross-examination.
Yes, so here on South Texas Now, we promote education and leadership within your community. And you, Mr. Flores, are a leader in both healthcare and law. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I can't believe I'm here. I grew up in a very modest, neighborhood, Mexican-American neighborhood with a capital M. Most of my friends dropped out in ninth grade. Once they hit algebra, that's it, right? I happened to be blessed with some smarts, and I had to hide my books underneath my shirt so I wouldn't get them thrown. I wouldn't get bullied by the other guys. I walked in back alleys. I literally protected my books. And then I had a newspaper route, and almost, I can hear the violins. But that was my gig, man. I liked money. I liked extracurricular activities like track and play a little bit of football. But, what happened to me growing up was I had to decide between helping my family and playing football. And the coaches just didn't understand. I could run like a deer back then. They said, you could even be a fullback. We want you to play. And I remember Coach Bodie and Coach Delgado saying that to me, and I said, you don't understand, but I didn't want to talk back. My mother and father were going back to college in their 40s, and every penny counted, and that's the way it was. So that was growing up for me, and I grew up with a lot of violence. There was drugs everywhere. And my dad used to say, out there's the jungle, and here's the World Book Encyclopedia. Get to reading. And they saved up, and they bought us the World Book Encyclopedias. And, man, I started with Childcraft, and I read A to Z. And so give me some Trivial Pursuit. I love it.
I do remember reading those books when I was young, too. So.
Yeah, I'm super nerd. So that's me. And then I said, how do I make more money? And I just loved healthcare. The Greek and the Latin suffixes and stuff, like dendritos for trees, and it talks about your nerves, how they look like branches. I just love those suffixes and all that special code. And I just started in that, and I started working in the hospital. I loved helping people, man. And I don't know, it just stuck. And by the time I was 20, I'm making the equivalent of about $80,000, $90,000 a year now. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So how do you feel that you encouraged yourself and stay determined to go to nursing school despite, the financial struggles and the environment in which you lived in? How did you triumph over those obstacles?
My mom, I told her I want to be a physician. She said, well, good luck. We have no money. I had a very strong mom. She looked like Lucille Ball, but she was the traditional Hispanic mom. Oftentimes she walked to work in baking heat, and she worked at a nursing home. And then after that, her day job after night shift was being a seamstress. But in the back of her mind, she wanted to become a nurse. And she told me, why don't you become a nurse, an RN? And I said, growing up in a Hispanic neighborhood, machismo and stuff, I said, oh, come on. The only guys that I know and now it's different, a whole different world. But I'm going to say what it was like in the 80s, and I'm just going to say it. I said, they're all gay, and I'm not gay, and, I don't want to be. And I learned differently. There were all types of men that were in nursing, that were orderlies, to RNs, to house supervisors, to physicians, that you can be tough and you can be caring. So she told me to do that. Best advice ever. I mean, minimum wage back then was $3.5, $4 an hour. I was making like $8, $9. I was a happy camper. And so I worked in that, and I went through high school. By my senior year, I was working half a day and I already taken all my honors classes, and so I only had like 4 classes left. Sweet! And And then I went on to community college. JUCO was my option. I mean, the counselors back then weren't exactly rooting me on to go to Texas A&M or Notre Dame or Cornell. They were just saying, be glad if you go to, Beeville, and nothing wrong with all those schools because my parents started out there. But I was very lucky that the hospitals paid for my tuition. I will forever be very grateful for that.
So let's talk about some of our viewers who may not have that encouragement at home. What is a message that you would send to them to pursue an education, a higher education, go find jobs? What is something that you would tell them?
I grew up with guys like that. Half my friends are dead or in prison. And now, I'm going to more funerals than birthdays now. Turn 50, everybody starts dropping like flies, especially after COVID. And that's just the truth. You learn to appreciate life more. And there were a lot of people that, in fact, my father, an educator, even did the Jedi mind trick and said, son, you don't have to go to college if you don't want to. But he made me work every summer in the watermelons and grain, working on rooftops. And he said, my senior year, I'll never forget, going into my senior year, do you want to work in the heat or do you want to work in the AC? And I said, I love the hospital. It smells great in here, and the AC's good, and the food's not too bad. I'm one of the few that likes hospital food. So, to those that I say that don't get the encouragement at home, there's always somebody like me. There's always somebody like Judge Joe B. There's somebody like you, Vanessa. There's always somebody going to be in your life that's going to encourage you to strive to do better. It doesn't just have to be your parents. Your parents are too busy trying to pay the bills. It can be an older brother. It can be a best friend. Something inspires you, and maybe it's within that says, I'm going to do it.
Well, here at South Texas Now, even if we may not know you, if you're on your journey to education or a career, we're always here backing you up and supporting you. Another question I have now that we're going to jump forward to your career now. So what are your, favorite and maybe not so favorite aspects of law that you have to encounter?
I like that jump forward thing, but I tell you, in between there were a lot of years, from 20 years old to 30. Those years were working in the ICU and sometimes working in the ER. I saw suicides that weren't completely finished. Attention, graphic speaking here, viewer discretion advised. I saw the death of children. I saw 18-wheeler accidents. I saw people that, because of alcohol, killed somebody else. I saw random acts of violence. Crack had just become hitting the streets. I saw the gangland automatic weapons, things that a 20-year-old man should not see. I was 6 inches away from. And I worked with doctors that were Vietnam surgeons at that time and said, we have never seen such violence since like on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so those formative years, when I went to law school, Professor Minton, I'm the only guy who taught law school for a day. And he didn't know that I had taught community college. And he told me, are you ready? When he walked in, there's 120 people. I said, I was born ready, And he told me, today, Mr. Flores is going to teach the class. He pulls out a piece of paper and goes, here are my notes. It was blank. But I had done and I went ahead and I interviewed people, man. I asked people about the facts. We went through everything. I'd been preparing for that moment all my life. And, I remember that. And I said, these kids are 7, 8 years older than me. They haven't even seen life. And I remember the first day of law school, they said, what'd you come back to law school for? Everybody said, to help people. For justice. I said, I came to take a break. It's rough out there, And people were thinking I was being cute or funny. I love the law, but actually, all you do is read, study, worry, and work hard. And I think that's where we segue into the law. So your question, I think the hardest part is selecting your cases. As I get older, I can be more selective. But I don't like to see injustice or to see somebody that if they don't have the money to pay, and somebody else that's got $5,000 to pay a lawyer for a DWI, and somebody who has $400, that it's going to be a different sort of representation. I don't believe in that. In fact, I give 250 hours of my time a year pro bono. And I'm no saint. I just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
I've just seen people that have gone through that. I think this is going to be a part 1 and 2 because it's a lot.
So to wrap that up, let me ask one more question before we take a break. You were talking about, the discrepancy with maybe someone who paid an attorney $400 compared to $5,000. Do you believe that there's a discrepancy in service there when it comes to the law?
I'd be spinning yarns if I didn't tell you that justice, you get as much as you pay for sometimes. And I don't want to sound jaded like that, but if you got a legal team of people and you've been indicted for 60 counts in federal court, you better come with the A team. And you're going to pay millions of dollars, even if you have a chance of getting off. Because we're looking at federal court, for instance, 96% conviction rate. People cut deals all the time, and mass incarceration has just gone crazy. We have more people in jail, almost 10 times as many as we did 30 years ago. Why? Mandatory minimums. We've taken away the judge's ability to sentence somebody and said, you got to give them this minimum and this mandatory. The other thing is, I volunteer my time pretty much. Once gas, windshield time, and everything, and I get paid for a plea. I do it now in my 50s, and I say, I'm going to help a brother out. The problem is, these guys think that I'm an old guy that hasn't had 18 years in federal. 22 getting paid what I'm worth getting paid. Some moron fired me to hire a guy and pay him 10 times as much, thinking, oh, this guy's just a court-appointed or something. And there's nothing wrong with court-appointed. Federal court-appointed attorneys taught me how to practice federal, and I'll say it again. In federal court, you better know what you're doing. So my hat's off to all the federally appointed judges. Strike that. Let me go right back. My hat's off to those that participate in CJA panel, or the ones that are the federal people that are giving them their time, that are appointed. The federal defenders, public defenders, they are great. And I know I've got like 30 seconds left, but what I'm going to say is, and I mean it, is that, yeah, sometimes you don't get a fair shake. But if you get a good attorney that's appointed, you can tell right away. Do they return your phone calls? Do they explain everything that's going on? And do they advocate for you? Those are the main questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Flores, for answering that question so thoroughly and letting our viewers know stuff to look out for. If they're ever in a case where they have a public defender, to know if the defender is suitable for their case and really advocating for them correctly. And if not, maybe what not to look out for. So we'll be back here in a few.